Good evening, Matt.
Good evening.
Good evening, Alex.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Emma. Thank you.
Welcome to the Musicale.
Thank you for having us.
So we're going to talk about your new album, AM. And I know you spent longer in the studio on this album than you did on your others. Is it important for you to give yourself time?
I think so. I think the way we went about making this record was a little bit different to how we've worked in the past. Typically, in the past, we've had periods of time where we would do a sort of pre-production phase and we'd write songs and work out what everybody's going to play, and then we'd go and record them for like 3 weeks or something. Whereas this time we managed to get our own place. We took a long lease on this grubby little studio and made it our own, and did a lot of writing in the studio. And because it was our own place, it meant we could just record everything for as long as we wanted and experiment a little bit more. And I think that shows on the new long player.
But you started recording after touring with the Black Keys in 2012, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Did you want to take that energy from touring into the studio?
That was the plan, wasn't it, Matthew, originally?
Indeed.
We put a song out just before that Black Keys tour called Are You Mine, which is we included on the LP because that was the impetus for the rest of the record, really. The plan was, because Are You Mine got such a good reaction, and we all felt it was the best song we'd had for ages. And live, during that Black Keys tour, we'd play it, and, you know, you could just, there's so much, like, you get a lot of energy back from the crowd with that particular tune. So our plan was to make a whole record that would surround that song.
Then you decided to finish recording before Glastonbury.
Yeah.
So how good it is to have a deadline. Was it useful?
I think this time it was useful. Usually, I mean, in the past we've been quite quick, or always had a bit more of a plan going into the studio, so we knew when we'd finish. But yeah, I think this time we could have probably got a bit more carried away if we didn't have a deadline. Because I mean, we saw how bands can kind of get a bit lost in it and keep seeing what's around the corner. But luckily we had a bit of discipline.
Discipline, really?
Yeah, believe it or not, yeah.
So the first time anybody heard your new songs was when you played them live at Glastonbury. That seems a very brave thing to do. What was the audience reaction?
It was great, yeah. We didn't really... We only played a couple of songs at Glastonbury. There was one song that was out there already, Do I Wanna Know, which is the first track on the record, and we've been opening with that all summer, really, simply because we can't really make it fit anywhere else in the show. But
it's a good song to start with.
I think so, yeah. It sets its tone and in the way you want to set it. But yeah, we did that and Are You Mine, and maybe one more. But I think for Glastonbury, it was a lot more retrospective. Yeah, and, you know, did a lot of old songs and I suppose a greatest hits set, you might say.
Journalists like to categorize bands, and yet some of the greatest bands of the last 50 years have been impossible to categorize. How important is it to you to constantly grow, experiment, and change?
I think it definitely has been important to get us to this point, that we continue to evolve and look for something else each time, like what's behind the next secret door.
And you don't want yourself to be categorized?
I think it's healthy to look at it that way, or at least I like to think, going into making a record, I think assuming that nobody has heard your previous albums is quite a good idea, you know, like, because I suppose we've made a few records now, and one thing I have learned is whatever it is that makes it sound like the Arctic Monkeys is sort of built into the four of us playing. So you can push the other parameters, I suppose, further than I first thought you could, you know, and it'll still have the identity of the band. And I guess this new record is, you know, we push that idea of like a 4-piece rock and roll band to its extreme.
But there's the American influence, and I heard that some people said that you have discovered the Elvis inside of you.
Right.
So, is it true?
Hopefully. I don't know.
I hope so.
I mean,
Well, there's some signs.
there's something there, there's a little thing going on upstairs there that you might have borrowed from... Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, realistically, I mean, it's going to take a lot more than a haircut to get me close to Elvis, Emma.
Of course, but there's something about the crooner inside you that comes out that we can hear in your voice.
All right, well,
Definitely on this album.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, you can. I know that you used a cheap 4-track Fostex cassette recorder for your first demos. How early on do you know if a song is going to work?
I think, well, we did a lot of demos on the 4-track cassette recorder, which is something we used to mess around with in the very early days of the band, and then kind of have been going about it differently recently. But this time, I don't know, I think we got into a rehearsal space, or the studio, and we were all kind of set up in the kind of, I guess, like this, and it just didn't feel right. There was something about it, we kind of weren't really getting anywhere. And so I suppose we got the 4-track recorder out to see if we could go a different route, and it definitely leads you down a, because I suppose I wrote a lot of lyrics and melodies to these recordings that were on that machine, and I don't know, I kind of believe that certain old bits of, whether it's a musical instrument or a 4-track recorder, it's like they have songs or ideas trapped inside them, like
They have a spirit.
Exactly, yeah. There's like ghosts in their walls that you can kind of set free somehow. And I definitely think that, you know, I got loads of songs out of that piece of machinery, or you know, that I kind of arrived at conclusions I wouldn't have done sitting on an acoustic guitar, you know.
Or at the piano.
Or at the piano, because I can't even play it.
Less likely to
So
reach
I
any
was
sort of
really,
conclusion.
yeah.
The influences on this album are very eclectic. I'm hearing a little bit of Captain Beefheart, Black Sabbath, Fleetwood Mac, but also some R&B. Are there any other influences we wouldn't expect from you?
I think you've sort of, I mean, maybe the R&B thing came as a surprise to some people. But yeah, I guess it's like, I suppose we wanted it to sound like the Spiders from Mars covering an Aaliyah tune or something, sometimes.
Warren G, Dr. Dre.
Of course, yeah. All them things have been things, that was almost like our unique selling point in the beginning, was that we knew about, like,
Ex-girlfriend
hip-hop.
music.
Exactly. And I guess this album, we're just wearing that on our sleeve a little more. But I think it's still relatively subtle. You know, we borrowed some parts of the melodies or the vocal production from, like, some of that music, but, or the way the drums sound, I don't know. But, like, yeah, there's still no kind of rapping.
And what about the Space Choir Boys and their cosmic opera melodies? That's how you call the...
That's what it is, yeah.
So Matt, you're singing?
I'm full of it.
Yeah, a lot of singing, yeah.
A lot of falsettos?
Yeah, I know, I didn't realise that was in me. I used to just shout as high as I could.
Yeah.
Then I just got over this brink of into the world of falsetto, as did Nick.
Yeah, Nick and you're both singing. Is it easy to sing? Is it easy to sing in the studio, and then when you have to sing on stage? Is it?
I mean, in studio, I suppose we put more attention on it, so there's more scrutiny. But it is. I quite enjoy it in the studio. Like really, I become somebody else.
Oh.
Like Mariah Carey or something like that.
Oh my God! There's a Mariah Carey in you.
Just,
Oh,
yeah, who
exciting.
knew?
Okay.
R. Kelly mainly. I should have gone with a man probably with that. But anyway, I'm not afraid. But then live, main issue I'm having at the moment is a bit of neck pain. But
Yeah?
I'm not gonna.
Because you have to switch.
Really?
You have to-
Just that. I mean, for some of them, I'm there for a long time, but I'm all over here. We'll get through it.
Your drums have never sounded like this before. So what was different about your approach this time?
I think we like simplified everything quite a bit at the low end, but and a lot of that was to do with how we were recording on the demos on the little machine that we recorded. 'Cause it meant that we just like in the writing process, I just record like drums for 3 minutes and then the bass had gone in, and then Alex would like write to that in some cases, and just due to the fact that we were recording on this machine, it meant like playing a bit quieter and like simplifying things. Which
sometimes a little bit more hip hop too.
yeah, because I mean I've always, like we were saying, I've always been into that like from school before I kind of got into guitar music, and so there's always been a bit of swing.
Josh Homme came to sing on Knee Socks.
He did.
You know him well. He produced your third album, Hamburg. You, Alex, you sung on the last record of the Queens of the Stone Age. Do you have an impact on each other's creativity?
Well, he certainly had an impact on ours during the making of that third record, and perhaps you could say that record affected everything that came after it. So the answer is yes, from our end anyway. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I love their new record. We always have been kind of huge fans of their bands because they're sort of trying to do something, you know, which you don't I suppose you don't get a lot of bands that are trying reaching for something. Yeah. So.
He was there a few months ago. He was there with Queens of the Stone Age, and he was telling us how instinctive his approach of music is. I was wondering if you got the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you know, the moment you feel like you get that sort of spark, and then you record it, you know, there'll be something in that recording that you won't be able to recreate. Like, and I suppose that on this record, like a lot of that stuff we were talking about before, the 4-track, you know, we kept some of that stuff in there, and it kind of became the skeleton to which we added things. Because you just can't. You think, oh, when you try and do it again properly, it's never
The same.
kind of the same. Yeah, there's something about that first time you do something. Yeah, and when the instinct is fresh.
Fresh. There's also other people collaborating on this album. James Ford as a producer.
Yeah.
Pete Thomas, who's Elvis Costello's drummer. Bill Ryder-Jones from the Choral. By the way, you came with him tonight.
Yeah.
How did you meet? With
Bill? Well,
with Bill.
Yeah, well, we toured with the Choral a few years ago now. I don't know, it could be getting on for like 30 years ago, I think.
Come on.
Yeah.
You're 27, Alex. Remember?
But yeah. I think it was like 30 years, like somewhere in the back in the 70s.
Back in the days.
Yeah. So we toured with the Choral then, and we became firm friends, and I've required his services a couple of times. Like you just mentioned the submarine thing a little bit ago, or was that in the 70s as well? I don't know. Like he kind of came and played some guitar and piano on that, and he plays on this song called Fireside on the new record, which
So you took
I
him...
just kept spoiling when I tried to do a guitar solo. So we kind of
So you took him
farmed it
on.
out.
You took him on tour.
Well, he's going to do the show with us tonight, yeah, and play Fireside and some others, and yeah.
The last song, I Want to Be Yours, is a poem by John Cooper Clarke, who is known as a punk poet. But for the French audience who might not have heard of him, can you tell us about him and why did you choose this poem?
It's, well, it was actually we're all huge fans of his work. And this was actually the first poem of his I ever heard. And I suppose it's been stored somewhere at the back of my brain ever since. And one day, maybe I just ran out of ideas and we were sitting there, or I was sitting there with this recording of this kind of ugly piece of music it was at the time. It had really sharp edges and it was kind of just a bit difficult sounding. And then I, for some reason, started singing some lines from his poem over the top of it, and then it was transformed, and then it kind of went through another few lives and became like what it is on the record. But yeah, he's just when I first started writing lyrics, he was one of the people who was a big influence on that. And I always admired the way he would take something relatively mundane and kind of make it colourful and captivating.
Have you ever thought about bringing him on stage?
He did come on stage once years ago, and he introduced us at Brixton Academy in London, yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's got a great stage presence, like, and his, I don't know,
he's doing
style.
Performances. And
yeah, well, that's where I kind of first saw him, really, was opening. He used to work on this bar in Sheffield where bands would play, and so, like, one night of the week it'd be like a Thin Lizzy tribute band. The other night it'd be like the unsigned bands night, and like Rory Gallagher some other day. And then, like, The Fall played a show there one night, and I got to work that one, and Johnny Clark was opening for The Fall, and
great
sort of
band,
just
The
pulling
Fall.
pints, and was sort of mesmerised by him, like rustling through his kind of plastic bag and just pulling out like these pearls of wisdom. And he was the first person and only person, I think, ever to compliment the name Arctic Monkeys for a band, and that's kind of why we stuck with that name. We met him, and we just started a band then, and we were telling him about it, and we told him the name, and he was like, "Oh, it's a great name! Like, it's such a," he said it's like a picture of trauma, you know. And then that's why we sort of stuck with the name, because. Yes.
If it's approved by
really,
John Cooper Clarke, then thank you, Matt. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for being here with us tonight, and good luck for your big tour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Allez, salut maintenant.